Hey, tolerators, this is Natalie, and before we get to the meat of the episode, I had some quick announcements to all the men I've tolerated before. First, we have our fall merch available in our merchandise store, so make sure that you get yourself to the link in the show notes to check out our tarot-inspired and spooky-inspired anti-misogyny merch. Our Patreon is currently running a 7-day free trial on all tiers. So if you join the Patreon now, your first week is free and you could binge all of our bonus episodes where we get to have a deep dive into the friendship I have with some of our most beloved guests. We are also having a monthly newsletter and a bi-weekly blog post, and that information can also be found at the link in our show notes. Please make sure to check out all of these changes and also follow us on Instagram at Men I've Tolerated Pod or TikTok at NatalieK124 so you can see all of these changes happening in real time. Enjoy the episode. Hey, tolerators, this is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie Katona, your weekly look at everyday misogyny. Today, my guest is from the podcast The Bar is Ankle High, which if you have ever listened to me complain about a rom-com or Lucas Scott on One Tree Hill on Still Comfy, you know this is one of my most headfast beliefs. On the show, Katie and her co-host here are openly honest about life, love, and everything that comes with an ADHD diagnosis. Today, we will be talking about how misogyny plays a role in how women often go undiagnosed and untreated for ADHD. Welcome and thank you so much for being here, Katie.
Thank you so much for having us. I know that my co-host Garrett would have loved to be here. She just couldn't make it today. But yeah, no, we are The Bar's Ankle High. Actually started and was inspired, that name was inspired by a coworker I used to have. And we were talking about dating, go figure. And she was dating a guy who all she wanted was that good morning text, right? And all this motherfucker would send her is like GM and would say shit like that. And she was like, she just was getting so irritated. And then she was like, well, I know he's doing it now because he knows it's pissing me off. And he's like doing that like cat and mouse bullshit.
Uh-huh.
And she was like, honestly, like the bar is ankle high. I'm asking for a text message. The iPhone like pre-populates the words for you. Like this is just ridiculous. So it just turned into this whole thing. And when I worked with her, we had something with my coworkers called the Tinder committee because all of us were single and trying to date. And so we would like group think our prospective dates and see who was like worthy and not worthy. And as of right now, only one person from that committee is with somebody they met during that round of dating.
Good for them. The winner. I'm sure if it was you, you would have claimed the crown. Like, it's me.
Oh, I would have actually had a crown. So.
Yeah. We should always have a crown.
Just, on standby. It's like I mean, I'm drinking champagne tonight, but like that Coco Chanel quote, like,
ooh,
always have champagne in the fridge because sometimes the special occasion is just that you have champagne in the fridge.
Exactly. I can remember when we connected about your podcast name and my podcast name, if I told you that like my go-to is always like the bar is on the ground and it's starting to slowly sink because that's how long it's been in the ground.
I don't actually remember typical, but but yeah, it was something to that effect. Did we meet in a group? Do you listen to And That's Why We Drink?
I do listen to And That's Why We Drink.
Are you in the podcast group for them? And That's Why We Podcast?
Yes.
That might be how we linked up.
Yeah. I linked up with everyone through Instagram, so I'm like, I don't know. I probably answered one of your stories as a text message, as you do when you're like, this person probably wants my opinion.
I mean, it's not unreasonable. I'm pretty active on our Instagram.
Yeah.
But no, I think it was actually in the And That's Why We Podcast group that we linked up, which tracks, because actually Em, the co-host of that podcast, is the reason that I thought I had ADHD, and their experience in seeking a diagnosis and exploring that really kind of validated my own experience, where I was like, wait a minute. And then I had already worked with Garrett for a few years at that point, but I was talking with her about it. And she was like, oh yeah, I got diagnosed a few years ago. And so then I would like check in with her and be like, hey, what about this? And she's like, yeah, no, that's the thing. And so then I asked my therapist for an assessment, and she's like, well, I can't assess you because I'm not an MD, and that's the rule in New York. And so I saw my GP, and yeah, he diagnosed me. But yeah, so at the age of 34, I was finally diagnosed with ADHD, which is also crazy because my mom for sure has it, and my brother was diagnosed as a child, of course. And I think today, I mean, I always did very well in school, but I think today my brother probably would have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Back in the day, he was diagnosed well, not diagnosed, but he was assessed for Asperger's, which of course we don't say anymore. But at the time but he was given the categorization as borderline Asperger's. So he wasn't allowed to have the in-school supports for it because he didn't actually have the diagnosis with his IEP. But looking at him now, he's got ASD. like, there's so much where I'm like, bro.
And I think that's one of the things that I want to make sure that we talk about is like how stingy and selfish people like to be with accommodations. Like one time I asked my sister to repeat herself, and it was something that I had to know. I do not remember what it was or whatever. And she's like, I'm not repeating myself. I've already told you. And I was like, uh-huh. And I think I got a text message or whatever. And I was like, so I didn't hear it and I need the information. And she's like, I'm not repeating myself. And I was like, and I just remember because at the very beginning, and I remember feeling this way about my disordered eating too, and depression and all of it. When you're at the very beginning of being like, oh, this is what's going on in my body and my brain, everything is just like hypersensitive and wrapped up to a million. So I'm sure I like got off the phone with her, burst into tears, and was like, I'm a grown up. No one's ever accommodated me. How hard is it to just accommodate people?
Totally. Yeah, and I've seen that a lot, especially since starting the podcast. But even before starting the podcast, I had hopped on Reddit, and I was like, okay, like let's see what Reddit has to say. When it comes to information, they help me find the right bra size, so like, why not?
Right.
And
I've seen that chart, the one where you have to bend over and lay on the floor and lay on your side.
Yeah, I did it, and let me tell you, like, I mean, I have some underwire bras. They're nice now.
Yeah.
I don't have to rip them off of my body like they're made of acid and I'm in the lake in Dante's Peak anymore.
I understand. I also was like, what do you mean I'm like a letter cup higher and 2 bands higher? And someone was like, yeah. Your boobs are just supposed to float in the cup, not just be compressed by the cup. I was like, what? But you were on Reddit trying to be like, so this ADHD thing, eh?
Good call focusing on you, by the way. Good job. Yeah, so I was just looking at it, and, you know, there was a lot of people asking questions of, like, you know, basically like that scene from Mrs. Doubtfire when Sally Fields is like, the whole time, this was it? This is what was going on? And so I was reading all these posts and like reading about people's dating experiences. And I was like, yep, that resonates. And yep, that resonates again. I'm like, holy shit, everybody's going through this. And I mean, I would say that my personal experience with ADHD isn't so severe in the, like, I can do the dishes. Like, I probably leave them way longer than I ought to, but it's almost never at a point where I have to throw something away because it's so disgusting and moldy, unless it like fell out of my bag and under the seat in my car, and I just forgot about it. So it's not quite that extreme. I've never lost a job because of my ADHD, but there are a lot of experiences, especially when it came to the executive function thing, because my apartment was constantly a mess. And I remember my mom saying to me when I was a child, like, well, it never really bothered me if your room was messy because you'll care when you have company over. Like when you're a teenager and you start having your friends over, you'll clean up because you'll care. And she's right. The thing is, that's the only time I'll clean.
Exactly. Yes.
Like I need that threat. And I mean, I'm an attorney. I made it through law school and undergrad. I graduated undergrad with honors. I managed to get out of law school anyway. I did not graduate with honors. But I passed the bar on my first time, and it's not that it matters. You're no better or worse of an attorney, no matter how many times you take the bar, as long as you pass it. But yeah, so I was looking on Reddit, and it was that kind of thing where I was like, well, shoot, like I wonder what I could have done differently, and what, especially my dating life, been if I had known this about myself sooner. I think on the one hand, I know that we've talked before, but I was in a abusive relationship that culminated in a night of physical violence. And I am not grateful for that, but I know that the work that I've done since that happened has made me a much more secure and strong person. But that being said, I think a lot of what I was tolerating was because I was trying to make up for my ADHD that I didn't know was ADHD.
And I think that's what I was just coming to terms with now as we were talking, where I'm like, because it's that whole, like, what could I have accomplished had I have known? Or if I had understood what was going on in my body and my brain, or if I had worked better with my body and my brain, instead of just telling me, like, other people clean your house or clean their house and you're just useless. And you just don't refuse to do things that you don't like. And I'm like, I do things that I don't like every day. I just also don't clean the shower.
Right. Yeah. Like as soon as I get out, like I'm in the shower and I'm like, fuck, I really got to clean this. It's getting slippery. And then I get out of the shower and the shower no longer exists.
You should see my car because that's my car's start. I was thinking about it and it's like so many, like, would I have been a teacher if I didn't know that, like, being a teacher was like a quote unquote normal female run-of-the-mill job that would eventually get you to wifey status? Would I, number one, I truly think that I would have experimented more sexually or had been more open about the idea that I fall somewhere on the LGBTQ spectrum of things if I wasn't always trying to make my life fit what I thought. And like a lot of things play into that: depression, religion, misogyny, politics, your family, all of it. But you're juggling all of that. And then one day someone's like, also, your brain needs help. Have you thought about that? And you're like, I just need help. I don't know. Now my brain? Just my brain or just me?
Exactly. It's definitely that feeling of like, well, yeah, of course, if I could just push a button and fix it, I would. Like, I don't enjoy, like, I definitely, so it's not that I don't enjoy having a messy place. It's that it doesn't bother me. I for sure do enjoy having a clean place and having a very tidy place and having everything put away so it looks like a magazine. I love when that happens. That's one of the very few reasons I'm looking forward to moving in a few weeks, is that there will be a point where everything is put away and it looks like I'm about to have a photo shoot in my living room. It's getting to that point, and I think for so long, especially professionally speaking, so much of what I did was billed as, oh, I'm just a perfectionist. And I'm just super competitive, which is fair. I mean, I knew I wanted to be an attorney because I won a mock trial in 7th grade. And then I decided that I wanted to be an attorney. And that was the end. Like, I had backup plans, but like, not really. Like, they were backup plans because people were like, okay, well, what if you don't get into law school? It's pretty competitive. But I had really good grades. So I was like, well, yeah, like, theoretically, I can do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah. I will just pick something else.
Right, like I grew up in the 90s, remember? You said I could do whatever I wanted to do, so like eat a whole dick. But like but so I like went to law school and I would have trouble especially meeting deadlines, and I would say like, "Oh, I'm really deadline oriented." And I was, in the sense that I met all of my deadlines, but I would meet them at the last minute. And I would meet them at the last minute because I needed that like adrenaline rush of, am I going to get it done? Am I going to get it done? To actually finally just like hit the gas pedal. Because up to that point, it was like this paralysis thing. And it doesn't mean that I'm not thinking about the thing that I have to do, which on the one hand, as an attorney, is helpful. It allows me to work on something else while I just have this other thing going on the back burner where I'm like, okay, well, how do I want to word that argument? Like, could I come at it from this way? But I'm working on this other thing on the front burner. So in that respect, it can be helpful. But overall, it's not helpful. I'm doing so much better now that I'm medicated and diagnosed than I ever was before. I mean, my therapist is able to offer me like working solutions to problems that I'm having with managing my time and managing my personal life. And it's also allowed me to, having that diagnosis and even having the clarity of like understanding what's going on without a formal diagnosis, allows you to take those steps to work towards what works for you. I also noticed when I was on Reddit that there were a lot of people, even now, I mean, it's only been about a year, so not much has changed, but there's a lot of gatekeeping and a lot of gatekeeping diagnosing and a lot of like saying, well, not everything is ADHD. And I agree, not everything is ADHD. Sometimes it's depression, sometimes it's anxiety, sometimes it's autism spectrum disorder. Sometimes you just forget to move the laundry from the washer to the dryer, and that's a totally normal thing for people who work full-time and have families and obligations. The issue and the difference is that it's actually impairing my life. The difference is that I can't have company over at a moment's notice because my house is a mess. The issue is that I am missing deadlines, or if I'm not missing a deadline, I'm not doing as good of a job on something that I should be doing when I have plenty of time to do a good job on it. The issue is that in my interpersonal relationships, my romantic relationships, I'm struggling with those boundaries and with understanding and reading other people and not interrupting. I mean, oh my God, my abusive ex, he said to me one time, like one of the things that he would like really get on me about was that I was always interrupting him. And then we spent some time with my extended family on my mom's side. And we left and he was like, well, now I know where you get it from because your entire family interrupts and it's fucking disgusting. And I was like, well, I never noticed it before because we all interrupt. It's not that big a deal.
Right. It's just called normal in my family.
Right.
Well, and because, so I have a lot of pride in taking after my mom's side of the family, but it's a lot of the same thing where we tell stories in the round because everyone knows the story. So as soon as my uncle has paused because he needs to breathe, then someone just picks up the next part of the story. And
Totally.
then someone goes, that's not how it happened at all. It was a Sunday, and now they're in charge of the story. And you're all laughing and having a good time. So you're like, this is normal, and this is what love looks like.
Right. And even if it's not like even telling a story in the round, like you just interrupt because you all probably have ADHD. And
Yeah.
think of something that reminds you of it, and that's the end. And it's just whatever. Like, it just never occurred to me as a problem.
My biggest downfall is actually that I was so successful against my own, like, better doing because I, too, would just push it until be like, I can write a 20-page paper in 2 hours, and how dare someone tell me that I couldn't? And then do it and score the A or the B or whatever and be like, haha,
Yeah.
I'm brilliant. And
oh my
burnt
God, that's
out.
how I got through all of high school. Like,
Yeah.
and I remember there's a kid now who's a cardiologist. Whatever.
Great.
Nerd. But we were in AP Euro together, and I remember him saying, like, to somebody else, but, like, next to me, basically, like, Katie's not even smart. Why is she even in this class? And I was like, first of all, fuck you. I'm about to have my Elle Woods moment. But second of all, buddy, either you're stupid because we're in the same class or I'm smart. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And he was, like, super PO'd because in New York we have, like, our state regents exams at the end of each year. And then we had the AP exam. And he was, like, super mad that I got a 4 on the test and then on the AP test. And then I did, like, whatever, 95 to 98 or something on the regents exam. And I was like, duh, like, I'm a good test taker. The problem is the homework in between.
Have you heard? I'm brilliant. I was the exact same way. And if I wasn't naturally gifted at something, my perfectionist brain would immediately go, we don't have to care about this. Because if we had to care about it, we would just be good at it. And then I would trick someone into getting me by. Sometimes it was a student teacher. Sometimes it was an older guy in my class who was like my friend and also like the fake teacher assistant because it's like high school and that's how he's just spending his study hall. And I'm like, hey, buddy, it's me, your cute, adorable, funny friend. What if when you grade my homework, you just remember how much you love me? And I and I was diabolical and I got whatever I wanted. Whenever I wanted. And then that continued into college. And then you're in this fucking real world. And they're like, who told you you get what you want? And I was like, my brain. Because I'm so good at the hustle.
My issue in undergrad was that, I mean, I loved my major. I was a medieval and pre-modern history major. And I could just read my notes from lecture. If I just went to lecture and took notes, I was fine. And I did well on the exams, and I would read, sometimes, if the class was interesting and if the professor made it interesting. But otherwise, like, I was pretty solid. Like, I was on the dean's list every semester, and I was cool. The problem with that was that I went to law school, and it turns out you can't just read the notes from class. That's useless.
How dare law school?
Yeah. And they kept saying, like, oh, it's the Socratic method. And I was like, means shit to me. I don't know what that means. You keep saying Socratic method as if that's supposed to be an answer to the question. And I had like no concept. Like looking back, I'm like our TA in law school was like, well, you can do an outline for the final after the syllabus, or you can base it on the textbook. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? What outline? And then I was even more confused because I was like, okay, well, I'll do the textbook one. Fine. Like we basically went through the textbook in order. Still doesn't answer my question because I highlighted everything. I had no fucking clue what I was reading. Like, where was the cardiologist asking why I was in law school then?
And then I went to teacher school, and to me, teacher school is a lot of just like soft skills that they then make textbooks out of, and they're like, don't you want to know the science of the brain and why kids can read? And I'm like, why would I ever need to know that? No. So I would just like...
Thanks for asking. Unsubscribe.
Yeah. Thank you, but no. I don't
Masters, please.
Masters, please. And so I was really good at all of the performative parts of teaching. And then again, it was like that false sense of success. And then... So when I quit teaching to go work in theater, a friend that I had in college who was younger than me, like went back to one of our college events and ended up telling one of my education professors, oh, Natalie doesn't teach anymore. She got a job in theater. She's really loving it. And he loved me. I remember this professor loving me. So I'm just like so hurt. But he went, I knew Natalie wouldn't love teaching, but you know what? She was just like, one of our stars. And I was like, no! You pull me aside and you go, hey, honey, do you want to spend 6 years just being like more in the mud with your codependency, but it's with like 38-year-olds? Like,
I think that is a part of higher education, especially, that is not talked about enough. I had a professor in law school, because my first year of law school I actually did down in Miami, Florida. And I had a professor who like pulled me aside one day. I went to his office hours about something, and he was like, Katie, are you happy here? And I was like, no, like this, like Miami sucks. It's hot 100% of the time. It's so fucking humid.
It's Florida.
People are mean. The drivers have no working taillights. I'm sorry. Why is there no state inspection in a place that has no fault insurance? And like, it is just fucking crazy to me. Like, I don't understand. You have daily downpours where you can't see your hand in front of your face, but you don't have like mandatory car inspections where you need to have working taillights. Fucking nuts. absolutely fucking nuts. No, this place is crazy. I absolutely, he's like, well, do you want to practice law here? And I was like, no, why would I? This place is a hellhole. And, he was basically like, yeah. So the thing is, he was like, I vacation every summer in upstate New York in the Adirondacks. You need to go home. You need to go back to New York. And I was like, fair, fair. He's like, why didn't you go to Albany Law? Like, that's a great school. And I was like, my whole family went to Albany Law. I don't want to, like, go somewhere where they all went and get in for free. And he was like, that's not.
That's
Stop
not
thinking
it,
that way.
Katie.
Stop thinking that way, Katie.
They're never going to cancel your student loans, Katie.
Well, he was basically like, stop, like, if you can get into a place because your family is known there, just fucking take the handout. Like, no, that's not the hill to die on.
So what you're saying is I can blame my stubbornness on ADHD. Thank goodness. I'm going to write that down. Accommodate me.
It is, I'm of the mindset, actually, that I think ADHD will end up being incorporated into autism spectrum disorder. I think ADHD itself is a spectrum, of course, but I think that there's so much overlap in the symptoms of ADHD and ASD, particularly, I think, in the elements of rigidity. Especially, I think, you see all these, like, tweets or whatever, where people are talking about how, like, if I can fully understand your reason for having a rule, I will follow your rule. If I don't understand your reason for it, or I think your reasoning is flawed or stupid, then I'm not going to follow your rule. I'm going to do it my own way, because I know that my own way is either more efficient for me or more efficient for everybody, but it works for me better than your way. And I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to dig my heels in, end of story. And that sort of rigidity, I think, is more often associated with autism spectrum disorder, but I see it a lot in ADHDers. I think that we are very rigid in our understanding of things, and I think that, especially having a co-host who also has ADHD, my partner has ADHD, her partner has ADHD. So between the four of us, like, there are definitely points where we have to all kind of take a step back and, like, think about the words that we're choosing, because we are all also the four of us friends. But when there's, like, this business component to it, we have to, like, separate things a little bit and say, like, okay, this is what I would like. Let me know if you can do that or not. And then I can adjust my expectations, or adjust and figure out what I'm asking, and we can figure out if what I'm asking is unreasonable and or why, and go from there. But it is something that you really have to be conscious that you're working on. And especially when you're undiagnosed, or you're newly diagnosed, or you've been diagnosed for a long time, burnout can catch up with you so fast. We did an episode on it in, I think it was December. And we did an episode on burnout, and it was just this idea of, like, when you have ADHD, everybody is riding a bicycle, whether you have ADHD or not. Everybody's on a bicycle. But if you have ADHD, you're on a low gear trying to go uphill. And so you're pedaling so much faster and so much harder than everybody else just to keep up, that by the time you get to the top of the hill, they might be a little bit out of breath. You need a full break. Like, you need to get off the bike and walk around and catch your breath and get your bearings. And then you can probably go down the hill way faster, but you need that time to recalibrate and catch your breath. But the reality is, especially I think if you're undiagnosed, and I mean, the reality is that I think, in fact, I know my current employer, my supervisor, made a comment to me in, like, November or December of last year, where he didn't know that I had ADHD at this point, but he made a comment where he was like, oh, well, if you're on TikTok, you think you have ADHD now or whatever. And I was like, well, yeah, some people do. And he, like, looked at me, and I was like, well, like, and the reality is, like, again, I think there is something that comes from being, as, like, aging. Like, I'm 35 now. My boss might be 15 years older than me, but I'm experienced enough in my field that we're effectively the same. So it's enough for me to say, like, no, you don't get to speak to me that way. which is the benefit of aging, I think, and it's beautiful, and it's something that nobody ever told us when we were kids, that like when you're older you actually like get to really hold your own in this like really beautiful and powerful way. And whether you choose to dye your hair or get Botox or not, you still get to do all those things and be like really assertive and like Wonder Woman, like Gal Gadot when she like realizes her powers kind of thing. Also with Chris Evans as your sidekick. Would also be nice. Or not Chris Evans, the other
No,
Chris.
Pine.
Chris Pine, yeah. All the Chris's, really.
All the Chris's, man, except for Chris Pratt. Fuck him. So mad at him all the time. And I think when it comes to so there's so much where the and I don't know, I'm not a historian, but I think that this is the pattern. Society and large groups of people will be like 3 to 5 years ahead of where we're actually at. So we're looking at employers who are still like, you work a 9 to 5. Maybe around 10:30 you get a little jittery, so you go and you like stand at a water cooler with someone and talk about Grey's Anatomy. And then at noon everyone goes to lunch, and then at 5 everyone goes home, and by 7 you're eating dinner. And they just think like that's how it should be, that's how it will be, and everyone can live in that flow. And what I've learned is once I didn't have to live in that flow anymore because of the pandemic, I could not transition back to you telling me what I had to do when I had to do it.
Yeah, I know that, not to speak for her, but my co-host Garrett feels that way immensely. And because she's currently pregnant, she's considering like our office's policies on pumping and the availability of a pumping space for nursing mothers, which is required by state and federal law. But she's going through all these things where she is sad. Like, we had a whole conversation at work with actually one of our union reps the other day, and the union rep was like, well, just ask for a reasonable accommodation and you need to work from home 5 days a week. Because we have a hybrid schedule right now where you can work from home 2 days a week if you want. And because she said, she's like, I can't go back to like 5 days a week. Like, absolutely not. And so she said, like, she's like, I might have to, because they want her to like pump on a regular schedule every single day at the exact same time. You have to go down to HR, get the key to the pumping room, then go from our floor, which is the second floor, then go up to the fourth floor, pump, then go back down to the first floor, drop the key off, and then go back to your desk. And then at the end of the day, because there's a mini fridge in that room, you have to go back down to HR, get the key, go up to the fourth floor, assuming nobody's there, because that could be their pumping schedule. Like, if they're there till 5 p.m., they might be pumping it when she leaves. But then wait for them to leave so that she can go into the room, get her stuff, and then skedaddle, and then go pick up the kid from daycare. And it's all these different things where she's like, that is absolutely ridiculous. Like, the fact that you're thinking that that's acceptable is just nonsense. And it's true, but it's that kind of thing that I think the pandemic allowed a lot of us to have the space to be like, why am I commuting 40 minutes each way? Why am I driving and taking the train for hours and hours and wasting all this time that I could be spending with my family or my cats or my whoever? Like, I could just be at home.
Because if I'm at home, my accommodations are on me. Like, because that's currently what's happening with my day job. My day job is I'm grading standardized tests, which means I have to listen to children answer the same 2 questions over and over and over again. And they have 2 scheduled 15-minute breaks and a half-hour lunch, but ask me if I'm sitting there the rest of the time. No, because I self-accommodate, and I'm like, okay, now I can work out. Mm-hmm. Now I can do a chore. Now I can switch it up. And I'm still outperforming people.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I agree. I think, even recently, I had to go back to fully working from home because I go into the office full time just because of the nature of my job. Our office flooded because of some like ice dam situation or something on the roof. So I was going in once a week, which is what I was doing during the pandemic. But it fucking sucked because I have to mail appeals. So I had to like do all this math to figure out like the next time I was going to be in the office, if I could get everything filed ahead of time. And it was fucking annoying. Anyway, the point being though, I was like, there's still nothing better than like being like, okay, I'm hungry. I'll go make lunch now. Or, oh, okay, it's like 4:30. I'll go take some chicken out of the fridge. Even though I have another half hour of work. Like just those little things. Also being able to pee in my own bathroom and not a public situation. Not that we pee in public, but a public restroom.
Just squatting in the
I don't
bushes
want your
outside of
listeners
your
to think that like
office.
public employees in New York are like just in a bucket.
Or to like literally get so fucking frustrated about something that I'm working on that I can literally just grab my cat and go, we will lay down. We're gonna do a quick 7.
Absolutely. I mean, there were times where I took my lunch break was me taking a half-hour nap because I can eat at my desk while I'm working. That's not a big deal to me. I can multitask that way. And in fact, I think that helps make me more effective because I'm keeping one of my hands busy and my mouth busy while my brain is busy. Fine. And to have that option, it's like, I'm not going to go sleep in my car. No way. If I'm in the office, I mean. I also wouldn't do that if I was at my house. But, yeah, like, just having that flexibility is just so nice. And with this whole, like, nursing situation and pumping, Garrett has said, like, I don't want to hear another thing about not being able to recruit workers when you refuse to give them a fully remote position when the job can be done fully remotely.
Also, and I don't know, but like, what if Garrett could be at home pumping comfortably or breastfeeding her infant because now the infant doesn't have to go to daycare because she can kind of do both. Like,
right, exactly. And that's why our union rep was like, well, that's your reasonable accommodation then. If they can't, like, guarantee that you can get to that room. Because the reality of pumping is, like, it's a bodily function.
Mm-hmm.
So your breast will become engorged. You'll start leaking. You will be in pain until you pump or feed your baby. And that can be affected by your hormones, of how much you had to drink the day before, how much the baby ate the day before, how much the baby ate that morning. I mean, it's like so many different things that can affect that. But I was like, somebody was like, either in HR or a different union rep was like, well, potentially if you're the only person who needs the pumping room, we can give the key to your supervisor. And I was like, so that's the same as asking your supervisor if you can go potty. Like, if you consider what that really is. But because it's a female only experience or AFAB only experience, it is this like super hyper regulated. Like, oh, there's only one key and they're worried about the cost of making keys. I'm sorry, I just had 2 keys made at Home Depot for less than $10. And like, I refuse to believe that the public, we work for the state, that the entire state doesn't have a key making machine somewhere in some fucking basement.
Right.
Like, where just make a fucking copy of a key. But not only that, we all have IDs that are like the little swiper thingies.
Yeah, put the scanner on the door.
You'd think. And like, it's like, well, it's privacy. Only one person can be in the room at the time. She was like, privacy or not, just get a room divider. Like, what? Like, also, I can't speak to the other floors, but to the extent that there's modesty involved, you've had like no less than 14 different people inside your cooter when you gave birth. So like, at that point, another person who's nursing, seeing potentially the side of your boob isn't exactly an issue.
Right. I don't want to talk to anyone else who has it about, I don't want to speak for, I don't want to talk to breastfeeding ladies, but I don't want to talk for people who have to breastfeed. But I think that men have way more of a panic about that function than we ever have. Because I remember being a child sitting in rooms with my mom's best friend, with my aunts, with anybody, and they were breastfeeding a baby. I understood the functioning of breastfeeding at a very young age because I was watching it all the time. And no one was like, Natalie, avert your eyes, or like, oh my God, someone cover up the boob or the baby.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And certainly, so I also can't say that I've never at this point nursed or pumped, but I can't imagine that if you're in a room with other people who are also pumping, that there's much to look at other than like, oh, do you like that model? This one is better for me because like you might have a conversation about the different type of pumping machines you use. But beyond that, I just don't like unless really, unless the baby is there, there's nothing to talk about.
I I truly knew that like my time at 9 to 5 living had to come to an or that
That
I
sounds
was
like an MLM.
yeah, that I was done playing a 9 to 5 game when it was my life on the line and my happiness and my joy. One time I had gone out to lunch, come back to the parking lot for my office. I was finishing a phone call with my best friend and I sneezed and my period jump started again. And
Ugh.
I had period. The fact that it like didn't also just like deluge onto the car, but I knew I was like, okay, well, 15-year-old me would have been riddled with shame, trying to like tie something around my waist or whatever. 27-year-old me would continue my work day. I go, but 33-year-old me is going the fuck home because I can do this job from home. I'm going to drive. I'm going to shower. I'm going to change my outfit and I will have my horrendous jump started period at home.
For sure. Yeah, I think again, like that's that thing with aging where I'm like, I'm just not going to put up with being uncomfortable if I don't need to be.
Also, I think the pandemic made me realize the sensory stuff that comes along with how my brain works because I'm like, so I'm just going to sit in wet pants for the rest of the day and know that I'm miserable and torturing myself. And at this point, I don't want to torture myself anymore.
Yeah, for sure. Because all I would be thinking about is like, oh, everybody can smell it. I can smell it. I'm definitely smelling, even though there's nothing probably there to deal with. Oh, I'm a mess now. Every time I stand up, I have to consider like the middle school. Like, am I good? Am I good? Like, check behind me. And you know, no, I'll just go home.
I'll just go home. And it was like my boss's third day because I had like gotten a new boss in the beginning of this job. And I just texted him. I was like, I've had a female wardrobe malfunction. I'm going home to change. And he's like, well, are you coming back? And I go, no, because I live 40 minutes away. I'm not, how is that reasonable for your time and for getting the most work out of me if I'm spending 80 minutes in the car to change my pants?
Well, not only 80 minutes, but 80 minutes plus the shower time. Because, like, let's be clear.
Let's be clear.
Like, that is not negotiable.
I'm taking that handheld shower to myself, like to just be like, my God, a massacre. And I think like when I watch women just being like, no, I will be considered, and you just like watch the panic. And that's what's eventually going to happen with people who are on the ADHD spectrum, the autism spectrum, where it's like, no, I will be considered, and this isn't a big deal.
Totally. And I've said that, like, since my boss made that comment last year, I've said something to him where he was like, oh, well, can't you remember? And I was like, no, I have ADHD. Like, you can see, like, he's just this, like, quiet about it. And I'm like, well, what now, man? Because, like, if I need to get a doctor's note, I will. But, like, it's one of those things where, you know, it's the struggle with it a lot of times I feel like, especially for women, comes from the fact that,
hey, and part of me thinks that it's like everyone else's ADHD and spectrum that's making someone go, no, it's a big deal to accommodate you because somehow if I accommodate you, I was wrong yesterday when I didn't accommodate you. It's like, nah, bro, we can just move forward.
Right. I have great news. I have terrible working memory. So if you're just nice to me now, I'm good.
Well, and then it's like, well, if I let you work from home, I have to let other people work from home. Okay,
it's not pie. Like, I don't get it.
Save the money on rent then, dude. I don't know.
Oh yeah, they're so uppity about it. They our agency started saying that maybe like 10 months or so into the pandemic, they were like, "Well, you need to fill out this form and tell us what you're doing each day." So that like and so as an attorney, it's we call it timekeeping. But it's so I've worked for firms where we were just flat rate firms. We didn't bill our clients like hourly. So they didn't get a bill where, oh, Katie spent 0.3 hours on the phone with opposing counsel or whatever. We didn't do that. But when you have to do timekeeping, you still keep a time, like a spreadsheet of all that shit you do. And they started requiring that. And I was like, this is bullshit. For the most part, I was in a different unit than I am in now. I had nothing to report. I was sitting around. The courts were closed. Nothing was moving. I'm sitting around writing on my fucking spreadsheet. I'm waiting for a call from my supervisor. What do you want me to put that I'm watching Love is Blind or Tiger King for the second time?
And it's all about the nickel and diming. Like, how do I make sure that you're earning your wage? I don't know. How are you making sure that you're paying me and actually making sure that I have work available to me? Like,
Yeah. Oh, totally. And I mean, I'm in a new department where I definitely don't have that issue anymore. But one of the reasons that I was like, I'm absolutely coming back every day and not doing any hybrid schedule bullshit is because if you were in the office every day, you didn't have to do the timekeeper thing. And if you worked anything hybrid, if you worked at home at all, you had to submit that timekeeper thing for every single day you worked, not just the ones that you were working from home. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I refuse to be babysat. Absolutely not. I'll just come into the office. Like, if it's that fucking important to you weirdos, I'll be in the office every day. I don't care. And then our building flooded and they freaked out as to like why I couldn't possibly work from home when they are the ones that made it impossible for me to work from home.
I was infuriated when I was working a hybrid schedule and I would be in an office doing nothing except for watching Critical Role and being comforted by Liam O'Brien. And I'd be like, why? I could be doing laundry. My cat could be looking at me. I could be talking to my best friend while I'm working on this. Like, there are so many benefits to my emotional and mental health, also my productivity, that you're just holding on to some like sick claim to my time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we kept getting these like bullshit newsletters every month that were like, you know, we're showing higher productivity with people who are working from home. And then they're like, make sure you're not letting your productivity slip. And I was like, could you just pick a lane, please? Are we working more or less? Because when I work from home, it's way easier for me to work past 5 p.m. because I'll hyper focus and get that second wind at like 4:15. And I'll blow right past my clock out time. And it's not like I'm salaried. I can't charge them for that.
No.
So, like, what harm is it? You're, like, effectively getting way more work from me. I'm also not having to deal with talking with, like, about the banal bullshit with my coworkers who I can't be bothered to really care about. You know, somehow I'm viewed as being less productive when I'm at home, or I have to prove that I'm actually productive. And it's the kind of thing where I think it goes into that kind of ADHD, a little bit rejection sensitivity, but definitely justice sensitivity, where it's like, if I haven't given you a reason to think that I'm not following the rules, then stop thinking I'm not following the rules. Like, I'll follow the rules. I'm working when I'm supposed to work, just like I did before.
And I think that, like, part of the misogyny comes in with accommodating ADHD or accommodating anything in the office or work from home or, you know, anything where it's like, but then who's in control?
Yes.
And do we want women to have an easier time working and raising families? Because then who's in control then? And like, well, what happens if they can make money and raise their kids?
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, there's also that thing of, you know, what happens if they can make money? Well, what happens if they're actually producing more? Like you are. You're outperforming your colleagues. So now I'm outproducing my colleagues. I want to raise. The end.
The end.
You know, it doesn't matter where I'm working. The point is I'm doing it. Like, you think I have like an army of mice doing this for me? Like, no, it's me. And that's the other thing. I think there's like a bizarre distrust, and I think it comes from more the history of paternalism that we have in the workplace that has become misogyny, but it is that thing of if I can't see you do it, then I can't believe you did it. And it's very much a like, oh, did you brush your teeth before bed? Let me smell your breath. Like, I don't trust you. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, it's one thing to ask an 8-year-old who is notorious for, they went into the bathroom for 15 seconds and said they brushed their teeth. Well, yeah, no, it's reasonable to question that. But, when I'm winning 90% of my cases, when I'm meeting every deadline and exceeding every deadline, and I have no complaints, like nobody's complaining about me, like leave me alone and let me work. Like I'm just happy to be left alone.
Well, and then it's like an ego stroking thing too, because I have had a lot of employers who will watch my success, and because they are an arm length away from my success, be like, look how well I did training Natalie to do that. Look at me let her soar. And I think what we found out during the pandemic is that middle managers are middle for a reason. And they don't and again, I think a lot of people panicked. I think a lot of those people were insecure, not quite sure of themselves, middle managers who were put into middle management because their daddy played golf with someone else's daddy. And then it's like, why can't I work from home if I can continuously show you that I'm doing a good job? And it's like, well, because then what would I do? I don't know.
Well, that's just it. So the thing is, those middle managers, like, let's be real, they're all probably mid to late 40s or up, right? So all of those folks were put into that position by boomers who are like, okay, like, thanks, Johnson. Pa, 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 pa. Like, pew, pew, pew. Just finger guns everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're put into that position, and then suddenly at the pandemic, where they're like, oh, make sure you're checking in, get on WebEx, get on Zoom with your people, have a conference call. I mean, I was having daily fucking conference calls with a manager who my desk before the pandemic was literally outside his office door. I got maybe 6 different assignments in the full year before the pandemic, other than document review, which, let's be honest, an intern can do. Regardless, we were having these daily conference calls, and I was just like, my brother in Christ, like, what are we doing here? But it's because they had to be able to say to the boomers that put them in that position, this is what I did today to make sure my people are paying attention and doing their job, when they never did that before, because they were able to go into work and be like, hey, Marky, and like move on.
I have a friend who's doing the same job as I am from her own home, and she actually recommended me for this testing job. And we will just text one another back and forth and be like, they must have been hit on during their leader meeting about this because everyone's getting a phone call about it.
Cool.
Everyone got a DM about this today. I think we're going to have you and Garrett back so we can talk about misogyny within the medical community, because I'm about to just start a second episode. But we went with jobs instead.
Garrett has a lot to talk about that one.
Then we will make sure that when I go back so I can talk to you and Garrett at the same time, that you guys also get to come back.
Yeah, we'll make sure that she's actually available. I promise. We'll make sure at least that she has power.
Yes. But let's end the episode with our 2 little traditions before my dad just busts down my door and is like, I've been standing out there for 45 minutes. And I'm like,
oh my God, do you have a text on your phone you were in D&D?
No, I've been checking because I'm in D&D. And so I've just been looking occasionally, which is great for my ADHD to just be like, I guess I'll make the phone light up.
Oh, I know.
So we like to end every show with a lesson in a manifestation. So with being I hate using the term late in life diagnosed, because then it's late in life pregnancy, late in life marriage, late in life.
Well, I have all of those things going for me at this point. But no, it is statistically a late diagnosis in the sense that most people who are diagnosed in childhood are diagnosed before the age of 10.
Yes.
And males are diagnosed at 3 times the rate of females, or AFABs anyway, today, which is way better than it used to be in the 90s when we were growing up and going through school. But it's still, you know, a 3-to-1 odds of getting diagnosed and getting those interventions young. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with late diagnosis.
All right.
I'm going to be a geriatric pregnancy by the time I end up having a kid anyway. So whatever.
It just feels so offensive. Well,
I know. I told my boyfriend I'm an octogenarian.
I've started referring to myself as middle-aged, and people do not like that because I'm 34, and I was like, I don't know though. Have you checked out climate change? Like, I might be middle-aged.
That is dark, but I'm here for it.
I might be old as hell, like, in conjunction with the planet. Like,
yeah, I mean, listen, we just lived through a pandemic.
Yeah.
And in, you know, as a medieval and pre-modern history major, we are, you know, in the golden years.
But what would you say is your like legacy lesson that you would like to pass on to people? Like, hey, kids, this is what you should know.
What I would have liked to know most 10 years ago is that you are different, but there's a reason for it. Mm-hmm. And it's okay. It doesn't make you less worthy, less valid, and it doesn't limit your ability to be as accomplished as you want to be.
Yeah, I think I would like tag on to that and be like, instead of putting in all of this energy to making yourself believe that you deserve grace, just do the grace thing and move on. Like, like I told you, I loved meditation right up until I realized it was a coping mechanism. And then I was like, I hate it because now it's just something that's helping me instead of something I'm enjoying. Things can be, I had this like art date with a friend where we were just like scribbling with oil pastels on the same poster board, like parallel playing. And I just remember telling him, like, I have a really hard time actually recognizing what's relaxing and what's just something that I'm doing to do a thing. And he was like, what do you mean? I go, for so long of my life, relaxing only happened when I was burnt out, so it involved watching 18 seasons of Married at First Sight.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's such a good show, though.
I love Married at First Sight. We can talk about it whenever you want.
It's so good. It's so bad.
So good. It's so bad. So I was telling him that the only way I can actually be like, I relaxed today is that one Saturday a month where my body refuses to move, so I have to relax. I go, but doing this, like doing art with you, like I'm happy. We're having great conversation. I'm still using my creative brain, so my brain is activated. I go, well, look, would you classify this as relaxing? So I would love to just like have people make that bridge where it's like you get to have the grace to create what it is that works for you.
Absolutely. I think that's why I love our podcast so much, is that it scratches that itch.
Mm-hmm.
I can be weird, I can be funny, I can be intellectual, I can be whatever I want to be. And so can Garrett. And it allows us the space to do that in a really creative way. So I haven't had to dig out my cross-stitch box or start sewing face masks again or, you know, any other random thing, because I have this to throw myself into. And it's something that, yes, it's work. Absolutely. There are times where I'm like, yeah, I forgot to make the post that I was supposed to make today. But there is so much satisfaction out of it. And I think, yeah, I would agree. I think I know that Garrett has struggled on our show. She's realized that the only way that she relaxes, or what she deems a quote unquote relaxing activity, is actually something that's productive. It's cleaning, it's gardening, it's doing stuff around the house and getting projects done. And she said on the show, she was like, oh my God, do I not know how to relax? And it's that kind of thing where you kind of have, like, we've both had various existential crises on the show. But it is that thing where I think it's worth allowing yourself, like you said, the space to just exist without having to earn the right to exist in
Or
that space.
or even have to just like keep score with yourself. Like, I was really good today. I was really
Yeah.
lazy today. Or like, I was a person who relaxed today. Like, we're so hyped up about labels and calling things that I'm like, not everything has to just be in the name of my mental, like, illness. It can just be like, it eased my depression, but it wasn't about my depression to begin with.
And I think that when will this come out for you?
When will this come out for me? I feel like it's another summer one. I can pull it
Okay,
up on the Google calendar.
that's okay. So in May, we just did 2 episodes about mine and Garrett's experiences with diet culture and our experiences with
Oh,
dieting. And we talked about that thing that we have both done in the past of, well, I was really good today, so I'm allowed to not exercise.
mm-hmm.
Or I exercised a lot, so I can have a glass of wine. And kind of like holding yourself hostage
Yeah,
and that sort of thing. But it's taught to women especially in the context of dieting and in the context of disordered eating, billed to us as the way to deserve affection, the way to deserve the right to take up space in the world.
yeah.
So yeah, what you said fully fits into into those episodes of ours
Oh, we've
back in
talked,
May.
like, I'm exhausted about talking about, like, my relationship with food and how some days it's good, some days it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think about it all day, some days I don't think about it at all. Some days food's disgusting. I'm
Yep.
like, why would I ever eat something?
Oh, for sure. My
Uh,
hyperfixation meals, oh, they're amazing until they're not, and then
until
I'll just starve until I am hungry enough to find something else to eat.
But what would be something that you hope for the general collective energy in our future when it comes to ADHD diagnosis, misogyny, all of the above?
I think that there's plenty of space for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, I hope that whoever's listening doesn't feel like if they don't have a label for what they're feeling, that it doesn't matter. So
Yeah,
that's what I'd like to put out into the world.
I love that. I think my manifestation is going to come from my Lord and Savior, currently Taylor Swift. And I'm just hoping that all of
You
the
really made me nervous with that Lord and Savior.
no, it's usually Kesha, Lady Gaga, or Taylor Swift,
Okay.
or Tony
I was like,
Collette.
uh-oh.
No,
You're in the
Jesus
Bible Belt. I don't know.
Jesus Christ and I had a breakup right when I got into college. And I was like, oh, it just doesn't make sense for me. My Lord and Savior, Taylor Swift, has told us time and time again that for everyone who thinks not accountability, oh my God, accommodations and accommodating people, meeting people where they're at, and being empathetic as fuck and just allowing people to actually thrive with whatever's going on in their body is super hard and will steal joy from them or time or money or whatever. Taylor Swift says you need to calm down. You're being too loud. Why be mad when you could be glad? And that's my manifestation. I hope that people calm down. I hope they stop being too loud. And I hope they get glad
And not hefty.
and not hefty. And I hope that everyone, if you didn't get Eras tickets, you at least got to watch it on TikTok.
That's a solid manifestation.
Yeah. But Katie, tell everyone where they can find The Bar is Ankle High.
So we are on all podcast platforms. You can just search our name, The Bar is Ankle High. We're also on YouTube if you need subtitles. It's just a static image. We don't do like a video podcast or anything. But we have that available if you need that. I don't go through and like edit the subtitles. It's just whatever's produced. So like it may not be may not be perfect, but it's close enough, I guess. Anyway, so we're all on all podcast streaming platforms. And we are most active on Instagram, and our handle is at the bar is ankle high. Or you can go to bit.ly/ankle high merch if you want to check out our merch, which would link you back to our website. Or just go to thebarisанклehigh.com, which has all of that information and our bios, all of that stuff. And listen links, most importantly, if you're struggling to find us. But I love our Instagram. I run the Instagram. I'm super active on it. I love getting messages from people. Occasionally I'll fight with some people on other posts who are claiming to cure different hormonal conditions or think that essential oils can cure disease.
Ew. They need to
that was the
calm
episode
down.
as we're recording this, the episode that we released this week was about our part 1 on essential oils.
Mm-hmm.
And part 2 we'll talk about essential oils and ADHD and all that bullshit.
I do love to huff some lavender, knowing that it's not doing anything for me, but it's like, what if I just
Not
roll
true.
that
It
up?
actually does do stuff for you if you smell it. So it interacts with your olfactory nerves and triggers a reaction in your amygdala, which is the emotion center of your brain. But don't eat them.
No, don't eat them.
Don't eat them.
Also, here's my PSA, like I'm Bob Barker. Also, be careful if you have essential oils in your house and you have pets, because they're very toxic to pets. Even sometimes the vapor.
Yes. Yeah. So definitely check with that. And, MLMs are dangerous anyway.
Right.
But we do have, so by the time this comes out, we'll have had 2 episodes, 36 and 37, on essential oils. So if you are curious about essential oils or worried, you can go listen to those. And we have some solid tips from like Johns Hopkins and like reputable sources for how to find an aromatherapist who isn't going to like poison you.
And then I think that this episode is coming out after Ellen's episode, so I'll make this plug again. If you are a person listening to the podcast and you have ended a toxic relationship or ended a relationship that was just boring and not serving you, a la Taylor Swift and that Joe dude in Europe, or you told off your boss or some other misogynist, or you were in a position where you stood up for yourself and then looked around and you realized that no one was there to back you up, please DM me, because this episode is coming out August 3rd. That means it's been 2 months since I've been at the Eras concert, but I bet you I still have friendship bracelets and I'll send you one. Remember, tolerators, you don't have to smile through anything you're tolerating, including endless meetings with a boss who's so insecure with themselves and their life's work that they want to know minute by minute what the fuck you're doing while you're working at home. And they definitely don't want to hear thriving or relaxing. Smiles are for joy.